Welcome to the Global Corporate Venturing webinar. This is the 3D printing and advanced materials session, and I'm delighted to welcome a series of fantastic entrepreneurs to pitch, coordinated by Ken Gatz for the GCV Connect powered by Proseeder platform. After the pitch sessions, the second hour will see a roundtable discussion of corporate investors alongside the entrepreneurs as we look to dive a little deeper into the topic. But without further ado, I'll say welcome. Thank you for you all for being able to join. And it's my great pleasure to hand over to Ken to run through the pitch sessions. Hi, Ken.
Hey, Jim. Hi. Thank you so much. Well, again, welcome everyone to the 2021 GCV Connect Roundtable for 3D printing and advanced materials. We've had over 30 companies, startups apply to present. From that, 5 have been chosen to present today. However, their materials, as well as all the materials of the applicants, will be available on the GCV Connect platform. If you will receive an email after this event to log in and be able to review those materials. Just as quick background, Proseeder and GCV have partnered together to launch the GCV Connect platform to connect the supply and demand for innovation, the supply coming from all these amazing entrepreneurs, the demand coming from these corporations who are trying to rapidly innovate with the external ecosystem. Proseeder, just as quick background, is a platform for CVC units to discover new opportunities, manage those opportunities through workflow, and then report on the strategic, financial, and pipeline of your CVC units. And with that, we will start introducing these startups that are presenting. Well, that wraps up our entrepreneur or founder presentations today for 3D printing and advanced materials. Throughout the year, Jim can talk to you more about, we're going to be doing this on a continuing regular basis on industry sectors, and as we have been. So excited to really bring the supply of innovation to the corporates and try and make some relationships happen there. You can log into GCV Connect powered by Proseeder. We will be sending another email around after this event, so you can set up your login credentials, both to see information on these companies, connect with them, as well as the other 30 companies that applied to present today. So with that, thank you to everyone, and I will hand it back to you, Jim.
Wonderful, and thanks as ever, Ken. Really appreciate the partnership, and really excited to see so many great entrepreneurs. So thanks for being able to moderate that so well. Really much appreciated. Before we start to open up to the roundtable discussions, I'll ask all the CVCs to introduce themselves. I'm mindful we've got a lot of great people in the as attendees. If any of the attendees want to join in, got a question, raise it in the sort of Q&A function, and we should be able to invite you to speak as well. Ultimately, we want to make this as interactive as we can do, but ultimately we want to be respectful of people's time as well. So we'll start the conversation with the main CVCs, get the feedback from the entrepreneurs as best we can, and then we'll take the conversation on from there. But before I do that, just a small sort of self-promotional thing. It's not really a humble brag. I'm really honoured and delighted for the team on this behalf. But today we've just been honoured by the Queen. We're a UK-based company here that runs Global Corporate Venturing, and so we've been honoured to receive the Queen's Award for Enterprise, which is pretty rare to be given out. And so over the past sort of 10 years that we've been going, it's a real sort of testament to what effectively the whole team has delivered, and that's been done in partnership, not just with the employees, but a wider base of people like Proseeders and others who have really sort of helped us, but ultimately it's been delivered by our customers, the corporates, the universities and others. And so as we get ready to our annual events, which will be in London, Tokyo, California, as well as Brazil and other places, it really means a lot to us to have it recognised from such an authority, from a Brit's point of view. But ultimately, this is deserved by everyone here who's not just on the session, but all our customers and supporters over the past 10 years. We wouldn't have been here without you, so thank you. Now on to the more exciting bit. I couldn't resist from doing that, but on to the more exciting bit where I'm going to ask the CVCs. You've heard from a number of them already, but I'm now going to ask them formally to actually do a quick sort of welcome address. So Garrett, you asked the last one of the last questions. Perhaps you could just give a little bit more about HAX and SOSV, please.
Yep. We're not actually a CVC. We're just a normal institutional investor, but actually about a third of our LPs are corporate. So joining in, but I think the topic here is relevant because we invest heavily in robotics, IoT, tend to be pre-seed investors. So kind of very first checks into companies. We've made about 250 investments so far. And probably most notably in the 3D printing world, we're one of the first investors in Form Labs, which I'm hoping everybody knows on the call. So we love working this way, and then we're very hands-on with lots of engineering support as well as follow-on capital. About a $900 million fund right now.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that. And Jennifer from EBW.
Sure. So I'm Jennifer from EBW New Ventures, which is one of the largest infrastructure operators in Germany, primarily in energy, like utility grids and telco. And we've recently invested in, well, last year in Through Your Mind, which is a software, like end-to-end software for the whole 3D printing workflow from part identification over an ordering, so an ERP and an MES in the end. And with this, it's similar to sort of defense and oil and gas use cases. It's really about all about resilient supply chains, getting more sustainable, and on the warehousing spare parts area. So I'm happy to make an introduction there as well. They are already have a lot of customers in the US, like large organizations already. So I'm happy to make an introduction as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate you being able to join. Ginger from Heritage Group's HG.
Sure. And you said this was the more exciting section, but we wouldn't be here without those entrepreneurs. So figured I needed to throw that out there. I'm Ginger Rothrock.
Sorry, Ginger. I meant more exciting than me talking about my own company.
Oh, okay. That's fine then. I'm Ginger Rothrock with HG Ventures. We're the corporate venture arm of the Heritage Group. So those who don't know, Heritage Group is a 90-year-old U.S. Midwest industrial with operating companies in heavy construction, environmental services, and specialty chemicals. So we invest in core, adjacent, and disruptive to our businesses. And we also have a Heritage-sponsored Techstars accelerator to support businesses in the same sector. Like the rest of the CVCs, invest off the balance sheet, 1 to 10 million first checks, lead, follow. We have about 20 companies in our portfolio, and we've been around for about 2.5 years. Specific to additive manufacturing, the Heritage Group overlaps really only in the material side. A chemical company has precursors that go into the polymer additive side. And on the venture side, we led an investment in Equispheres, which is a Canadian company producing an aluminum powder for metal additive.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Dong-Soo Kim from LG.
Hello, my name is Dong-Soo Kim. I'm the CEO of LG Technology Ventures. Of course, we are the corporate venture capital arm of LG Group. We work with various LG companies, including LG Electronics, LG Display, LG Chem, LG U+, which is a telco arm of LG, and then LG CNS, which is a IT systems integrator, and LG Energy Solutions, which is a large manufacturer of lithium-ion batteries. So again, we manage a fund. So in aggregate, we're managing over $400 million. We invest mostly in Series A or later companies, and cover a very broad area of technology.
We'll get into that. Thank you, Dong-Soo. And then Kyle Nell from Singularities.
Yeah, I was the first one to make the Zoom boo-boo. So sorry about that, everybody. I promise I know how to work a computer. My name is Kyle, and I come to SU from working in large corporations in innovation and on the venture side. So I worked at Walmart and then at Lowe's Home Improvement, and I think best known for helping to put the 3D printer in the International Space Station with our friends at Made in Space. And so we made a lot of strategic investments, not just in time, not just in cash, but in time and an opportunity. And so that's the thing. There's a lot of cash but there's very few partners to help get these things out of smart people's heads into the reality. And that's the hard part. So anyways, I started a company that then was acquired by Singularity. Singularity, if you don't know what it is, was started by Peter Diamandis of XPRIZE and Ray Kurzweil about a decade ago to help solve the world's big problems by bringing people together that normally wouldn't work together. So SU has done a number of different things like Made in Space and others and helped to stimulate that. And so I'm running Singularity Labs now, where we help to go find these opportunities and partners, and then we help to build it. So anyway, excited to be on the call with all you wild and crazy investors.
Thanks so much, Carl. Marcus from BSF.
Yeah, BSF Venture Capital. We are global investor with a current portfolio of around 30 active portfolio companies, of which are a handful in the 3D printing space. For example, Essentium in the United States, Big Rep in Germany, Prism Lab in China. In addition to that, we like to invest in new materials, but also digitalization, of course, AgTech, and new business models around the chemical industry. Yeah, so that's basically who we are.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marcus, as ever. Anil from TDK.
Nice to meet everyone. Anil Achuta from TDK Ventures. We're investing off our second fund with 200 million AUM. We focus on mobility, industry 4.0, energy and health tech. Very nice to meet you all. I've been a happy investor in 3D printing space. Invested in Origin, which was acquired recently by Stratasys. So very nice to meet you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anil. And then we've got Nick from Tangible IP.
Hi, thanks, James. Thanks for inviting me to the panel. I'm not an investor. I'm an intellectual property specialist. I have a strong interest in working with SMEs and startups and investors into the material space. So I have a lot of involvement with printed electronics, 3D printing, med devices, and those sort of areas. So I'm kind of interested in understanding better how companies want to use their IP, and I help them to strategize around how to use this IP and to create value. And that's my interest.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. It brings a very different perspective and it's really useful. Really appreciate you being able to join. George Gogler from Severstal.
Hello, everyone. First of all, Jim, I need to congratulate your team. I think, the crowd rarely makes the right choices. This time they did the right thing. So, yes, God save the Queen. My name is George. I run Severstal Ventures. It's a classic corporate fund out of Russia. We are a steel company. We're part of a bigger conglomerate. We have tourism assets, say TUI in Europe, gold assets, one called Nord Gold, plywood manufacturing, and a few retail companies, medical companies. So we have quite broad interests, mostly on the CVC side. We focus on materials. We launched about 3 years ago. We have about 5 active deals, a couple of fund investments. As a steel company, we could not avoid 3D printing. We did our best. We could not find any successful business models or companies in the space, not in the first wave, not in the current second wave with all the SPACs. Last year, I did an investment into a powder technology out of California, which we think might actually make some money in that space. Otherwise, it is a very tough market to be in. But, as a materials investor, we like it. It's interesting.
Thanks, George. Appreciate the congratulations. They're much appreciated on the team's behalf. And last but not least, from the initial sort of roundtable cohort, Nathan from Hypertherm.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Nathan Pascarella from Hypertherm Ventures. We're the corporate venture capital arm of Hypertherm Incorporated, based in Hanover, New Hampshire. Our company originally was founded in the area of plasma arc cutting and that for metals, and also we've diversified into water jet and laser-based technologies as well over time. We launched the CVC in 2019, and thanks to GCV and participation at GCVI, and again, recognize your recent accomplishment, Jim. I think that's great because that's really where we got our start and got underway. And so you guys are top notch in our view. So thank you again. Our investments really are tied into advanced manufacturing. We look at industrial IoT, AI, machine learning, robotics and automation, and then of course, additive manufacturing. We do have an investment in 3D printing in the metal space with Mantle, based in San Francisco, who just came out of stealth mode back in February. And again, we really tend to focus in on the metals-based technologies for additive, and happy to be a part of this discussion today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to you all, and obviously thanks to the entrepreneurs for being able to stay on. Much appreciated. I suppose the opening question, just to get the ball rolling, is we've heard from a lot of the entrepreneurs about areas they're looking to disrupt, all the way from sort of dental implants through to sort of more just-in-time manufacturing for local suppliers, such as chromatic. From a corporate point of view, how do you want to work with those entrepreneurs? What sort of areas of opportunity or disruption are you really trying to explore? We've heard a little bit in the opening remarks, but perhaps if I start, with the sort of corporate venturing point of view, how do you see those areas of opportunities and disruption? And then George's point about how do you actually think you're going to make money from that, both from a financial as well as potentially a strategic return. So George, I'll open with you if I may. How did you select your portfolio company in that space? And why do you think it's been quite challenging from a 3D printing as well as advanced materials to really make some of the returns historically, and why is that starting to change now?
Well, I would say our world is currently built for mass production technology, and 3D printing so far is not. So yeah, you have to create a niche, and once you create a niche, you might actually grow the niche. But so far, we have not seen many of those niches, right? So some companies, as we know, that dental one, as mentioned today, my wife used it. It's good stuff, right? They found a niche. There are companies which find niches in printing Snickers and stuff. But really, I mean, the product market fit in this space is a very, very rare animal, right? So you have some service models which work. But in terms of like equipment manufacturing, I don't see like any success there. I mean, we do see these huge SPAC deals now, but I mean, look at the companies which IPO'd in the first wave. They're all public, and I wouldn't say they're struggling, but I can't say they're massively successful. So I think making money in this space, you have to be, somewhere, like you have to be all over the place, or you have to be super focused. So we invested in a company which we think has potential in improving, powders all over the board, be it, metals, ceramics, plastics, if it's powder based, whatever, the technology would work there. Or I would look at, super niche companies as, again, the type of the dental company we've seen today. I think that might be successful. It's really hard to find, a right niche in this market.
That's great. Thanks, George. Other thoughts on that? But Nathan, you said one of your companies has just come out of stealth. So how how long had that been in stealth, and what do you see as the areas of disruption or opportunity that are most exciting you, or what would you like to see the entrepreneurs working on?
Yeah, I think kind of going along with what George said, really focused, right? So Mantle is focused in specifically on the injection mold tool business. So solving a real problem with technology that really only additive can achieve. And I know there's other players out there that might talk about near net shape, and then final processing can be done and achieved. But I think what Mantle's brought to bear has been unique material development that results in really fine surface finish qualities that don't require secondary operations to go right into live tooling. And we've seen just from their their current work that they've been able to be not only done for early test or piloting work, but those components have continued on into production runs. So that's really encouraging for us. They have been in stealth roughly since probably 2018. Really, again, just trying to be focused. I think one of the things that 3D printing companies can be somewhat guilty of is that they can be drawn in multiple directions. And I think that one of the things that stood out to us was just the ability to focus in on a specific problem and being aligned to that marketplace and being able to deliver real quantitative achievements with the technology matched to that market space. I don't think that's where they stay forever, but that's where they start. And I think that's really one of the critical things that we like to see the CEOs really be focused and stay that way. And again, I think that's just, it's been really great for us to witness and watch that.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thanks, Nathan. Marcus, from your perspective, again, if I think about BSF as a chemicals company, are you viewing this area of 3D printing and advanced material as almost a downstream for what you would be creating, sort of, or what is your areas of disruption or opportunities that you would be seeing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's for us, it's very clear, and that we are, of course, today a big supplier to the plastic injection molding industry. So, and we sense that a good part and a high value part of that will merge towards the 3D printing sector. So, and we're currently building up a material business in the 3D printing space. So we want to be a material supplier to the 3D printing industry, but not just coming from us. We very much believe in an open system. So we will also trade other materials and develop new materials with other partners. So our interest in investing in 3D printing companies, be it hardware companies, 3D printer manufacturers, or software companies or platforms, is to build the ecosystem and to test and learn about new applications. And so that's why I'm always excited and interested to participate in these pitch sessions when entrepreneurs, young startups come up and develop new ideas of where to apply the technology of 3D printing. And then, of course, we are happy to partner with these companies in order to find and to develop the best material for that specific application.
Carl, perhaps from your point of view, obviously, I think Singularity acquired Uncommons Labs, your sort of previous business. What are you seeing that will tackle, I suppose, the bigger billion people problems that really Singularity is trying to deal with? We've heard from George and Nathan that there's a lot of sort of much more niche to start with before you tackle the billion people issues. What's your interest in this sector in particular?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there's been a big step change in where investment is going. So there's a lot of dollars flowing into all of the social good and other green initiatives or what have you. So there's a ton of cash flowing in where it used to be very nichey. And so what I see is the fundamental problem in 3D printing is that we call it 3D printing or additive manufacturing. There are so many use cases for this technology and these smart people that are not seeing the light of day because it's just not, it's not in their sphere or their realm or how they view the world. And so what I would love to see is to find ways where we could repurpose or reposition things that you guys are working on, which is incredible, into other ways that could be in the view of larger institutions. And the primary way that I could see that's very easy to do is to realign what you're doing or what we're all doing with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. What I didn't hear, which I was a little surprised to hear, is no one said, I'm working on SDG 4, I'm working on SDG 2, because so many corporates that I know are aligning their corporate strategies to those SDGs. And it just helps to align what you're doing with what they're doing, which is helping the world fix these large, massive structural human problems and societal and environmental. So I would say that is the fundamental shift that I think is happening, and those that are going to do well, I think, are going to position quickly and make that transition faster, and those that don't, I think, will struggle within the smaller pond to continue to grow.
I think that's a great point, Carl. picking up on the SDGs, we'll come back to that in a little while. But I suppose if I ask the entrepreneurs, which SDGs do you think you already sort of be tapping if you've already looked at that? I'm just thinking Cora or Herman or anyone else from the sort of the entrepreneur's point of view. Have you already sort of thought about it in the way that Carl suggests?
I have not. I think going along the lines of you have to keep your focus coming out of the sustainability industry. We look for opportunities to leverage some of the sustainability of our technology to get market traction. But generally, I'm finding that organizations that are focused on 3D printing and 3D printing implementation are separate from the organizations trying to do sustainability. So even though we have some sustainability possibilities, when we present to customers, hey, we have the opportunity to make this material more sustainable, we usually get no traction.
That's great. Herman, I see your hands up. Carry on.
Yes, if I may just briefly add to our approach in terms of sustainability is, I think, well, what we are focusing on are on the speeding up the development of materials that are key, for example, to renewable energy, to reduce emissions in construction materials, for example, but also the technologies. By using this new tools, the AI and robotics, you minimize the waste, for example. So there are very, very different aspects of how you can pitch the benefits on the sustainability front, if that makes sense.
Really helpful. Thanks, Herman. Anything else from Elvira or Cedric? I think we still got.
Well, in my case, just to add that sustainability is talked many times when we see on solutions for using additive manufacturing in remote locations to avoid logistics and transportation and these kind of things. But I think that well, the developments are being conducted in a very separate way, and it is needed to work together to integrate the solutions in terms of software platforms, of course, for facilitate this business model, but also work together with manufacturers of equipments, because otherwise, if they are not connected, software platforms are unuseful for the real or for the physical solution. So sustainability would be very well improved, and we would be talking about real solutions if we would work on trying to join developments and to bring solutions to the real field and to the real problems.
Wonderful, thanks, Elvira. We've got some questions coming in through the Q&A as well. I think, Ginger, you've already started to answer it, but just to flag it up, just in case other people have some thoughts. We're talking about electric vehicles and whether that might be a niche but mass production space. So just interested in terms of how the CVCs, how you see the various of the big industries, such as car manufacturing, creating opportunities. Ginger, perhaps,
Sure. Yeah, we took a little bit of a different perspective than George did, where we thought, what technologies might we need to invest in or work at the corporate level to open up the ability to go after mass markets? And so, if additive, especially metal, I'll speak specifically to metal because that's the one we're most interested in. If it's going to compete with the casting and other mass production, these costs need to be changed by a factor of 10. Yeah, so equipment, processes, and powder all go into that. And for us, we were really most interested in the powder side because aluminum, lightweighting, reshoring manufacturing, supply chain flexibility seemed like the biggest hole to be filled, which is why we went and found the company Equispheres that we're working with. And we also think the powder piece is particularly interesting from just a general economic perspective, because right now, the money is being spent pretty equally between printers and powder, but, just like inkjet or any other industry, it's going to move quickly to the, most people have a printer and then the powder becomes the dominant expense or overall revenue. So definitely interested in how we bring manufacturing and additive manufacturing up to use of things like aluminum and even composites, which would be a really exciting area. I would love to hear others if they're doing in that space as well, because we didn't hear a lot about composites.
That's great, Ginger. I think Gareth, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think just there's a couple clear opportunities at least that we've been aiming at, especially in automotive. Like one is, well, Desktop Metals is aiming at this right now, but just inventory, aftermarket inventory. I believe a couple of the folks talked about this. You have to guarantee parts for 10 years after you sell a car, and nobody wants to carry that inventory. At least the 5 years I worked in automotive, nobody wanted to deal with that. The other thing that we're seeing is a huge plus, and it's like, I guess it's a hybrid on the composites conversation, but it's functionalizing parts. So for example, we have a team in London called Q5D where they're actually printing wire harnesses into physical parts which not only changes the structural parameters, but also reduces 10 to 15% of the floor space for assembly, right? So actually not just in like the part itself, but actually shifting the assembly processes and saving a ton of cost. So functionalizing parts in different ways is kind of where we see the next step, at least in hybridizing 3D printing into existing part production.
That's great, Gareth. Just to carry on with you, obviously, given your sort of role as a VC and given your success, particularly in the sort of more the deeper hard tech space around hardware, how do you deal with your sort of corporate LPs? What are the sort of the common challenges or issues that they're looking for, and how do you bring forward these entrepreneurs through the program?
Oh, I think the interesting maybe role that we play compared to like a CVC is we're a bit of an abstraction layer on let's say what strategy is. So I think especially from from a C-suite perspective, CVC is often kind of within strategic barriers, right? Looking out in the new world, but also kind of aiming in certain areas. We get to be a little bit of a abstraction layer to that, so we can go and play in interesting spaces, write smaller checks into like different things, and be able to kind of not necessarily go one-to-one in terms of areas we're looking at, but kind of go play in an interesting space and then help commercialize it and then bring it forward. I think that's where we're seeing a lot of value, at least from our corporate LPs, is kind of, oh yeah, let's go dabble and maybe have a smaller allocation into somebody like us and kind of go play in these maybe more frontier or earlier stage places.
Great, that's really helpful. Nick, similarly from your perspective, given the range of IP that you have to deal with, where do you see some of the most exciting opportunities of disruption happening, and how difficult is it to sort of bring the elephant together with the entrepreneur?
I think it's very, very interesting. There's been in the last 10 years, there's been a massive sort of explosion in activity, IP activity in 3D printing, really across pretty much 4 domains. The interesting thing is that the materials development side is lagging behind the applications and machine side of things. So the larger growth has been in patenting for the application side or in equipment side, and not in materials, which I find quite interesting. And the growth in numbers is going there also with the number of companies involved. There's quite a long tail. If you look at the analytics in the IP space, you see the usual suspects there with large activity. And by the way, obviously, patent stats is a proxy for R&D and commercial activity. But you see this really very long tail with quite a lot of companies, lots of startups. So I find it quite interesting what George was saying about finding difficulty to find investable propositions, when what I see is a massive growth in the number of opportunities out there, certainly from the activity in IP.
Okay, that's helpful. And then Anil, from a TDK point of view, obviously one of the things, just to go back to what Carl referenced around the SDGs, you've obviously made sort of that triple bottom line type of thing a big focus area, and it's seems to be part of the reason why you've been quite so successful so quickly. How do you see this space? Is this an opportunity both financially, but also are you looking at it as this way of potentially reducing logistics or other costs and therefore making things more efficient and effective?
That's a long question. I don't know which part to attack. No, I think look, the opportunities are there, right? And I hate to be the cop-out guy here, But I actually agree with what George says, but I also agree with what the rest of the crew says here. And unfortunately, we're in the business of acquired taste, right? Different people look for different things. And from a financial point of view, it's very clear that mass manufacturing is an $8 trillion market, or some ungodly number, right? And 3D printing is a very small market, right? It's like a sliver on that pie. Now, one would say that the opportunities that do tend towards that $8 trillion markets are the ones that look like, that are venture-like, right? So one would want to chase that. So hence you see companies like Desktop Metal and then all the other ones that are trying to get to that mass market, being a little more successful and more venture-like. Now, one could argue about the valuation, or is it really worth all of that stuff, but that's slightly on the separate side. But certainly when we discuss 3D printing, some of the mega trends are very clear. Advanced computing, again, speaking from an electronics company, right? Advanced computing is a very interesting market. All of these GPUs and AI chips on drugs, right? That market is a very interesting market where there's so much power being consumed that thermal management becomes a very important application. Autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, computing data centers, these are applications that are emerging that we simply cannot ignore. Now, one could say that it's very niche, and I would agree with them as well, but it really, does that really solve a fundamental problem, right? And that focus is very important. Another application that we're interested in is in making small electronic parts in metals. So think of, again, for many investors, that's niche, right? But for us, that's a massive market, right? For example, there are about 16 inductors in your phone today, okay? And how many phones are there? About 1.2 billion phones sold every day. With 5G, you need about, what, 50 inductors per phone. So you can start looking at this, and it scales very, very big, and add autonomous vehicles, add other things. The market starts looking bigger and bigger. So how is that tied to the SDG? Well, you don't really waste stuff with 3D printing. So less waste equals better to the environment, I would think. If you attack healthcare applications, orthopedic applications, dental applications, that would be SDG 3, if I'm not wrong, 3 or 2, I don't recall. Good health. So I don't know. I mean, I'm an optimist, and I want to think that the 3D printing market has something to do with mass manufacturing. And I feel that's where the companies should be focusing on the mass manufacturing side to get a small sliver of that big pie. And one last thing that I want to mention is there's something about the materials itself that go into the 3D printer. And not many people talk about it. And there's things that you can buy off the shelf, but there's this magic or black magic that happens that goes into the machine in order to get that, get a 3D printing ready. And we found that Origin was very good at that, going from the early monomer or whatever that material is, in order to get to that 3D printing stage. They were doing it much faster than everyone else because they had an open business model. So that we found was very interesting, and hence they got picked up by Stratasys. So sorry I gave you a bunch of things, but
no, it's perfect. I gave you a bunch of questions. So you've got a good memory. And so, but cool. I saw you shaking, nodding your head to that. Just given what Chromatic 3D is trying to do, are you similar to Origin in that way, or is that the sort of one of the pain points you're trying to tackle?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the pain points we're trying to tackle is really making sure that the material, at the end of the day, what do customers want? They want a part. They don't want a printer, they want a part, and the part needs to be made out of the right stuff. And I had one customer put it really well. They said, you know, when I'm going to 3D print an object, I have tens of materials to choose from, but when I injection mold, I have thousands. And I really believe that industrial penetration of 3D printing is going to require a level of adaptability on the materials to make that happen. Some of the strategic projects we end up having are things where we have a material supplier says, I've got a slate of 15 grades, I want them to be 3D printable. And that's what we work with them on. And then they can offer their customers a 3D printed opportunity with their materials. But I think there's a lot of material versatility that's offered for industrial manufacturing, and 3D printing is going to have to start matching that if they want true industrial implementation.
That's a great point. Gareth, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's just doubling down on the timing that's happening right now. So I think we all probably had some experience with the microchip shortage. There's like kind of plastic shortages kind of happening here and there in different regions. Basically every corporation or group that I've talked to, and as well as kind of the startups we're working with, are reevaluating their supply chains up and down right now. And that's starting with like, okay, what does resilience mean in the supply chain, not just cost? And then obviously with President Biden's several bills and edicts he's put out, there's a lot of movement around what is, I guess, regionalization and nationalization of manufacturing, which doesn't necessarily mean 3D printing and digital manufacturing is going to win, but nearly everybody in the world right now is asking the question, right? And if your economics are there, your opportunities there, it actually, all these doors are opening kind of all at once, which is, I think, a really interesting position to be in, especially for 3D printing.
Great, thanks for that. Dong Soo, I mean, just picking up on that, but also Anil's point around some of the electronics and opportunities, given what you see at LG Tech Ventures, you know, what do you see as the opportunities, disruption, and how are you approaching those questions?
Yeah, sure. So again, LG is, I mean, we are not so big on 3D printing, and so I want to just move the topic away from that, but more on the supply chain and materials. Obviously, I think the biggest topic right now is around EV and especially batteries. I mean, you know, even President Biden mentioned the battery, the need for that many times, and so LG is building a number of huge factories to build lithium-ion batteries for EVs, right? The problem is there aren't the material supply to build the batteries. The ecosystem infrastructure is not here in the United States. A lot of the materials, like, you know, anode and cathode materials, are made in Asia and have to be imported into the US to build the battery cells. And it's kind of a curious phenomenon, because there are a lot of startups in the US who are developing novel materials, but a lot of the manufacturing of those materials is not being done here in the US. So I think there's a room for opportunity for suppliers to build more capacity here in the US. But also, somebody mentioned, I mean, we've been talking quite a bit about sustainability. I think that's a huge area for everybody, including LG. I mean, LG Chem being one of the largest manufacturer of petrochemical materials for plastics, there's quite a bit of interest in now finding alternatives to the conventional plastics, for example, bioplastics or degradable plastics and things like that. So there's quite a bit of interest there. And also material recycling is becoming more and more important. And actually, I mentioned batteries. Battery recycling is going to be a very important area, mainly because of the shortage of the materials that goes into making the battery. So and also as the you know, cars, EV industry becomes more and more mature, you'll have just a tremendous amount of batteries that are not functioning anymore. So you have to find a way to recover the raw materials from those disposed batteries.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Dong Soo. I think Neil's nodding his head. I think TDK is just battery resources. So sounds like you're onto a winner there, Neil.
Absolutely. We've spoken with LG, and hopefully we continue to discuss. And yeah, this is about 3D printing. So I'd love to talk more about 3D printing for sure.
Great. And Jennifer, just thinking, picking up on Dongsu's point around the electric vehicles, the energy space in general, how would you see EBW approach the sort of 3D printed and the advanced materials? What are the opportunities and disruption that you're seeing?
The main part right now, being an infrastructure operator, is really on the spare parts, digital warehouses, decentralized warehouses, and supply chain resilience. So this is the main aspect right now in the grids, as well as in renewable energy generation, like not having central warehouse, but have local distributed, looking to have local distributed facilities where you can print, actually just have a digital warehouse. This is sort of the vision there. I'm going into that. On the EV side of things, this is not EBW's, this is my personal opinion. I'm actually not as bullish on, or particularly bullish on EV, or additive manufacturing in EV. I think it's, well, equally, it doesn't matter whether it's EV or a normal car. I am bullish on additive manufacturing in automotive production, but you can already, I mean, right now it's still the complex features, so actually more in a traditional engine, but also, well, the more lower number cars, but there's actually this year there will be a car coming out of a French car manufacturer, which has in the mass product, like a normal car, not like a high-priced car, has actually 3D printed parts. And I find that really exciting. I do think it's in production as well as in the sort of more warehousing space. This is just the right timing for, well, yeah, kind of the breakthrough of 3D printing we're all waiting for about 5 years or maybe 10. So
that's really helpful, Jennifer. I think we've got a question. I'm just seeing it in the Q&A. So I've actually asked Tom Cow from MFG to perhaps ask this live, and then I think Anil and others can then sort of respond to it there. But Tom.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for being on. Joy, do ask you a question. I saw it in the Q&A function, but it seemed an interesting one around how you found the powder feedstocks and whether people have got some insights.
Yeah, what we've been looking at is the basic question of how to make a metal part the best possible way from the very time it's taken out of the ground all the way through final machining. And the best possible way is the fastest, the cleanest, the most energy efficient, the least expensive. And what we've kind of settled on is wire. Wire is the feedstock, whether it's recycled or virgin. And arc melting has been around for 80 years as the most efficient way to melt metal. And then furthermore, all of the existing technologies using powder or powdered sinter with all the complications of sintering ovens and then heat treating ovens, that's all cost. That's all upfront cost and part cost. Well, wire, you get rid of that as long as you do play one trick, is you quench it while you build it. And you get material properties that are unheard of. You add multiple materials and hybrid constructions because you're quenching the part at the same time as you're building it. So it goes to basically what we're seeing is a lot of hype in this industry. Hype around, you know, oh, gee whiz, you need to make this an additive manufactured or 3D printed part, when indeed the technology is not there to get the mass production because of all the cost, because of all the time involved, shrinkage compensation for the oven. And, we have test cases in which, some of our suppliers have told us that they can't make two parts the same way. depending upon how much moisture is in the air when they are building their part, when they're building that green part. It's like, you know, you're never going to get to mass production. So I'm rambling here. I'll jump off. Didn't mean to throw a monkey into the works, but it just seems like, you know, there is an $8 trillion industry out there. And additive manufacturing right now is what, $1.5 billion? Let's go after the 99% remaining metal additive production. Okay.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it, sir. Anil, I saw you sort of nodding your head when talking about sort of powder feedstocks and, you know, thinking about alternatives.
It's all true. it's all true, right? The metal powders are much more expensive. I'm not the foremost expert. Nathan probably knows a lot more here, but I think the powders are really expensive because of gas atomization. You kind of have to deal with it if you want to do powder-based technologies. I've been looking for technologies that would give us the minimum capex and minimum opex, right? Which is like the unicorn or whatever we call it. So no sintering equipment, no metal powders. And then I found a few startups that do work with those on the metal side. I think one clever embodiment I've seen is utilizing copper sulfate solutions. So simple, very, very cheap, cheaply available copper sulfate using electrochemistry could be one way of doing that. But again, they have to meet the quality standards. Ultimately, I think someone said this, I think the CEO of Chromatic said this, I think she said, customers are very simple people, right? They like common sense prevails with the customer. Ultimately, they just say, look, I need a part that meets X spec. Can you do this or not, right? Ultimately, it has to meet the cost. If it doesn't meet the cost, it's all hype. So I agree with what Tom said, but I didn't hear a question.
I think he was thinking about whether wire fed would be better than powder feedstocks. But thanks for that, Anil. I see we've got a couple of hands up. I saw Herman's hand go up first. So Herman, you might have an answer as well, I think, or a thought on this.
Thank you yes, thank you. Very briefly, I think I just want to add that, I mean, one question is coming up with better materials that have certain properties, but you can also see it on the way of with the given materials, given metals, how you build the structure that has, let's say you use less of the same material with a different structure that gives it the same strength, let's say. So I want to point you, if you're interested on the more on the earlier research side, Chris Padaccini at Lawrence Livermore National Lab is as very nice. Again, he's working on printing these metals and optimizing the structure and also the composition of the materials to give them certain characteristics. So I can send to if anyone wants an introduction to Chris, we at Atinary work very closely again with the national labs and research labs. Happy to make an introduction if that helps. Thank you.
That's great. Nathan.
Yeah, I just wanted to lean in a couple things again. I think what was said was true. You know, when we look at this, I would just kind of jump back to what specific problem is trying to be solved with additive. And of course, right, if you have wire feedstocks, wire is already there. It's already exists in the welding world today. And if you can melt it and deposit it, that's great. The question I would then come back to is, you know, do I have to do secondary operations? Does that cost me? Depending on the material itself, do I need a heavy machine, high spindle power to clean that up? And can I even clean it up? So I think it depends on the problem you're trying to solve. We've kind of stayed away from powders ourselves on DED world, just because of some of the control measures and those kind of things. But the other thing with additive and metals specifically that we've seen is that, you know, we've been trying to start with, you know, powders, powder metallurgy, MIM type materials that already existed, and we were trying to adapt those to additive. Now I think it's a mix of what do you need to do with materials development to make it specific to metal production in the additive space.
That's great. Elvira, I see you there, and I see Nick putting your hand up as well. So.
Yeah, just to add, well, about the challenge of making the technology competitive and capable to meet mass production. I think it's a big challenge. And sometimes we are looking for, well, special technologies that could solve these problems of fitting or specific materials. But in some cases, we are not looking on the real process itself and the integration of the different steps that we have to follow in a manufacturing site. So it's almost a handcraft work. There are different steps, different machines, different softwares for each step. And for the end user, that is a mess. And whenever they have to deal with so many different software, machines, technologies, and whatever, it is so time consuming that sometimes do not take the time to evaluate the suitability of the technology, and maybe it could be a good opportunity for them. So I think that we have to look on also integration of technologies, integration and automation of the different steps between the different process of manufacturing. I've been working for more than 8 years in additive manufacturing in the software side, selling solutions of platform, but end customers need real parts. And when you work with them, you see that what they need is to have an integrated solution, maybe not the best one, maybe not the best technology, but something that could have a complete solution in an easy way or in an easier way. Yes.
Wonderful, thanks, Elvira. I'm just
totally
coming into the final 5 minutes. Nick, perhaps what I might do is ask you to sort of follow up secondary with Tom on that particular one. Just for the final few minutes, I just wanted to do a quick go round on the investor side. Obviously, we heard from the entrepreneurs, they're really looking for about 5 things: capital, customers, product development, hiring, and an exit. On the whole, maybe some regulatory issues as well. So I'll be interested to flip it on its head and ask the CVCs, the investors here, to say, what's one pain point that you have that you would like some help with? And then, because ultimately we heard from the entrepreneurs saying about their great teams and that they're looking to raise a C round to an A round or some other help. So we'll flip it on its head and we'll reverse the order, and I'll start with Nathan from Hypertherm. Any pain point that you particularly got at the moment that could be in additive manufacturing or 3D printing that you would wish to have some help on? Just very short.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing I guess that comes to mind for me is just supply chain management, leveraging 3D in the supply chain to fill gaps that may exist for the parent company, just in the short term with post-COVID kind of rollout here. So
perfect, that's helpful. George, Severstar.
Well, if we're not talking science fiction, then maybe companies which would do it 10x cheaper, yeah, would be a good challenge.
Okay, perfect. Anil, TDK.
Yeah, no capex, very low opex, maybe 10x. I'll tag along with George, and no post processing. Okay,
no post. Okay.
Or pre-processing. So no mixing. You know, you don't have to buy a giant mixing vessel. You know. To do this thing. So it should be able to come in a jar, stick it in, and I print inductors and capacitors and things like that. A little bit of science fiction.
Okay, that would be good. Marcus, BSF.
I could only repeat what Nathan has just mentioned. So finding a way how to integrate 3D printing in the traditional supply chains, or how to transition from the existing manufacturing supply chains to integrate 3D printing, instead of looking at a 3D printer, which is a box that is a standalone entity, but integrated in the whole production process. That is something I think where a lot of work still needs to be done, and where I think startups can help to make that transition.
Perfect. That's really helpful. Dong-Soo.
Yeah, I think for 3D printing to be interesting, you really have to manufacture parts that are very either difficult or expensive to make it in a conventional way. For example, a part that has a very complex shape would be an interesting idea. I mean, you can think about just having a very complex shape that increases strength while decreasing weight, right? I mean, that's or things like that. So again, I think that's probably just finding a problem first and trying to solve it would be the better approach than to just try to decrease cost or the, I guess, the property of the materials.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Ginger over at HG.
All of the above, plus solving the issues with qualification. It's currently taking $100,000, months to obtain properties for a single part made from a single material, made with a single process. So anything that can be helped on that side would be great.
Fascinating. That's really interesting. Jennifer.
There's actually on the workflow automation, there's an interesting project by BMW right now. So where they actually integrate, just if you want to Google it, where they integrate traditional manufacturing and AM running on 3M Mind. So what would really help actually sort of the entire process of getting all those, also the traditional parts into libraries and having those available. I mean, everyone's sitting on their CAD, or if companies start, or if some startup could convince companies to not sell parts, but sell the IP of the parts. So sort of having like more quality standards, or having kind of a way to ensure that that would be actually fantastic and make a lot of things cheaper if you want to print parts.
Wonderful. And Garrett from.
So I'm not a customer, so I don't have like the burning problem to hand out, but I would say one area that I think there's a lot of opportunity is output QC. So kind of things coming out of additive manufacturing, especially as the parts get more complex and the requirements increase. How are you doing QC on the output? And then maybe the pain point from the CVC side is you guys coming in on earlier deals with us too. So I think that's the one thing that we've seen with CVCs. There's a lot of opportunities in early stage deals. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about that as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. We'd love to follow up on that. And Nick, similarly, anything from your perspective that you're seeing as a particular pain point?
I think just from my perspective, the industry is not that old, and we've been living with a lot of materials that have been on the shelf, and that's been holding a lot of things back. I think we're on the cusp of a new era of materials genome with materials informatics. And we're going to start seeing a lot of new and very interesting materials being produced by some of these startups, probably that we've been seeing today. And this will provide, I believe, new opportunities for new products and modifications of manufacturing, and even integration in manufacturing with conventional processes. So I think the thing that's really a game changer, it's not just in this industry, it's across many industries at the moment, is informatics and data and the utilization of this to create new products. Perfect. And uncover new innovation.
Wonderful. Well, on that note, thank you so much to all of both the attendees as well as the panelists. Obviously, my thanks go particularly to the entrepreneurs who sparing so much time for them. And then just a quick note of thanks to the back office team, Petra, and then obviously our partners over at Proceed for being able to organise this. A lot of work that's gone into this. We really appreciate all your time, and most of all, we appreciate your insights. So thanks very much, and do let us know how we can help. Speak soon.